And how can you feel like you earned something if it's given to you anyway? You know what I
Well,
mean?
like, oh, okay. I don't think that anybody, if you want to go into like, this is like hours, like free will versus determinism and shit, like people will, this is like the really common argument that I'll hear is that like, you're the real racist. You think black people need help because they can't succeed on their own, right? Well, my answer to some extent is, yeah, I don't think black people can succeed on their own, but I don't think white people can succeed on their own either. I don't think anybody succeeds on their own. For the most part, you are a product of your environment, right? If you're born into a really well-off situation, like you're probably going to do okay. If you're born into a
shouldn't
really,
this all be class-based instead of race-based?
there are
in your
good arguments for
purported
that. And to some extent, I can agree with that. And I'm usually more comfortable saying, and actually, there are really good arguments for making it class-based because sometimes some affirmative action programs end up going to groups of people that they probably shouldn't. For instance, there are some studies that show that like affluent white women take advantage of a lot of scholarship programs that probably shouldn't be going to wealthy white women.
I've heard that.
Yeah, there's actually a huge schism in the feminism movement right now between people of color women versus white women, but that's a whole other thing. But like everybody has like this huge set of advantages and shit, and there's so much laid out before you before you're even fucking born that determines like how successful you can or cannot be. So like when people don't take account of those advantages and then they levy the same expectations on other people, I don't know, that makes me feel really shitty. Like people have so many.
But if you say, I don't think anybody can succeed on their own, then it's kind of like, what option do you have other than to just base it on class? But to say, it does seem kind of racist to say, yeah, I don't believe black people can succeed on their own. They need an extra boost from us.
But again, I would say the same thing about white people, because white people that are born into fucked families have bad outcomes as well. It's just that there are more black people per capita, or there are more black people as a percentage of black people born into bad socioeconomics than white people, is what I would say. And then to respond, or go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was going to say, to respond to like, well, what do we do? This is why I think asking this question is so important. Like, why are people fucked, right? Because the goal is to make environments as good as possible. So get rid of like lead contaminated housing. This needs to fucking stop. The war on drugs probably
is that still a thing? Lead contaminated
still
housing?
a thing.
I feel like that's been
What
sorted
city,
out a long time ago.
What city was it that just showed that like 80 some kids tested for lead poisoning levels? This was like just in the news like fucking 2 days ago, I think. But yeah, it's still or like Flint, Michigan. Like these are things that are still like very much like active problems. And a lot of the places that seem to have these problems are rundown buildings that, you know, black people happen to live in, you know, and there's a lot of like really interesting research following like crime history with like elevations of lead and shit that match up across like 25 different countries. It's like, oof. Yeah.
I've heard that too. I've heard that I don't know how true this is. It might just be grasping at straws. But so when Giuliani was mayor of New York, they had a dramatic decrease in crime. But that actually happened nationwide. And they were saying that it had to do with them not using lead in gasoline anymore. And that the people who would commit crimes were coming of age at the time that lead was removed from gasoline, so they weren't psycho crazies. Yeah, lead in crime and psycho craziness is a correlation. But I thought lead was removed in paint, before I was a kid, like a long, long time ago.
Yeah, I thought that was very long
Who
ago.
has walls that were painted from the 1940s?
Yeah, lead is removed from paint, but the problem is that it still exists in a lot of like, there are two big places that exist. One is in the paint that's currently on walls because it doesn't get painted over because poor places don't have money to renovate. And then two, it can be in soil outside. Like lead ends up contaminating soils, and those measurements can be taken like very accurately and measured across cities. But like, yeah, you've got things like that. You've got like incarceration related shit. You've got like the war on drugs. You've got other.
Is there like an equivalent higher rate of cancer in those communities, or any other like maladaptive health things that we could tie to lead poisoning or lead?
I don't know if
impact?
Lead predicts different types of cancer rates as much. I just haven't researched that at all. But I know that lead can predict. Lead can be highly predictive of criminal activity in terms of lead exposure at birth to, and then as a child up to your later life. And there are also biological mechanisms that explain how lead interacts with your body to create a more violent person as well. So like there's the mechanism to explain it, and then there's the empirical data that shows it happening.
So just as an FYI, lead was removed from paint in 1978. So it's places that were painted 40 years ago.
Sure, that's not hard to believe at all, I don't think.
Yeah, I bet it's not that common though.
Well, in some places, I mean, you can look up like lead soil levels. Well,
Now,
depending
they
on
would
how
have had to
shitty
paint in the
this
last 40
guy,
years.
the guy that lives in St. Louis, right? That's you, Taylor. Like, if you go to some places, I'm sure you could find some piece of shit fucking buildings that have not had like a new. And
half
another,
of the city looks like a paintball course.
sure. Another problem too isn't necessarily that like when they redo a lot of these places, they just paint over it too. So as paint starts to chip off and stuff over time, like that old lead shit is like, you know, like for asbestos, like a lot of the times for asbestos in a house, you don't actually get rid of it, you just seal it. But as time wears on, if that sealant starts to wear off and it starts to become exposed, like this is like a super well studied phenomenon that we should probably.
I've never even heard about the lead being used as a reason for this.
Sure, it's super fast. I highly recommend it. When I first saw it, I'm so skeptical of big claims like that, and it sounded incredibly fantastical to me. But basically, especially because the guy that did the research wasn't like a medical guy at all; he was an economist. But basically, if you look up like violent crime in the United States, I don't think it was a Freakonomics guy. I could be wrong.
He definitely talked about it. I don't know if he was first.
Oh, I'm sure they have. They've talked about it in a lot of podcasts. It's super fascinating. What this guy found was that lead contamination levels in soil, if you would draw a graph, it would look like this, like a kind of like a little arc or whatever. And then if you did a graph on violent crime, like 18 years later, it like perfectly matched in some areas. So what he started to do is he started to take all of these cities and he was doing these regression analyses and finding that all of them fit the mold. And then he went and he looked at other countries and he could find the same patterns in other countries as well, that you could find these lead levels, measure them in the soil, and that 18 years later, they would be these massive predictors in change in crime. And it's super fascinating research. And like when I read stuff like that, it makes me wonder like, holy shit, something as stupid as like lead paint can lead to so much fucking horrible shit. Like what else, what other kinds of like seemingly harmless things can have like such disparate impacts on society?
I usually find myself erring on the side of, are we past this yet? Like lead was removed from paint in 1978. So how many painted walls from 40 years ago are we dealing with? And
I mean, if you look at the data on like where the soil levels are measured, there's still a lot of places that have this shit. And you know, like
dirt.
Well, just kicking up the dirt, playing outside, breathing in the air around it on good days. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go full retard.
You remember how you played as a kid?
we didn't always sit inside like all day and not go outside ever. Like I'm pretty sure I fucking ate dirt as a kid, but I don't think you even have to.
But we're talking about today, though. We're talking about today. They got to be out there making
Not
a mud
even
pie.
today. Everyone in this podcast is 10 years older than the kids we're talking about.
Yeah, no, today it's not a problem as much as it was anymore, right? This predicted major spikes of crime in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's where the huge
we're talking about
was,
next
right?
year's college admissions. Like that's the core topic. That
yeah,
we're
but if
still
you
on.
had parents in the 80s that were committing violent crimes because of lead paint and shit, what kind of children are these people having, like either out of wedlock and broken families or dads that are locked up in jail? Like this is having very real impacts on children today.
I would love to hear a kid say that. They're like, hey man, I noticed your life's real fucked up. You know, you don't have a car. You got 3 kids by 3 different women. You're living on government assistance. What happened? Ah, man, my dad, he ate paint chips.
Yeah, but like, so like that sounds ridiculous to you.
Yeah. Oh, your dad ate paint chips?
That sounds ridiculous to you. But then when I hear a white dude who's 27 and just got his fucking bachelor's degree talks about how proud he is that he finally finished college, and this motherfucker lived off of mommy daddy welfare his entire way through college.
You're literally talking about Taylor right now.
Yeah, and he's like so proud. He's like, I got my shit, blah blah blah, and it's like, motherfucker, the only thing you paid in college was your fucking cell phone bill, and you feel like you did that all on your own? Sit the fuck down, dude. You are so lucky that mommy and daddy put you through school. Like, have a little bit, just a fraction of empathy for people that might not have necessarily had it like as good as you. Like, it bothers me just as much on the other end. And I think that like parents have a massive impact on how kids turn out. I mean, I'm sure you see it, Woody, when you go out to restaurants. You ever see a kid start to scream and parents just start feeding them fucking candy to shut the kid up, right? Or kids that are obese when they're fucking 14 years old, or not even like 10, 11 years old.
Oh, we hate the
kids
fatties.
are obese,
they're on the list.
right?
Yeah,
and
they're
like,
on the list.
You can hate the fatty, but one, this kid is fucked for life. You know he's going to be obese growing up.
It'll be a
And
short
two,
life if I have my way.
Sure. And 2, when he grows up and he has kids, those kids are probably going to be fucked too, because if this guy's already obese at 9 years old, this guy weighs, I've seen kids at fucking 9 or 10 years old that weigh more than I do. This guy's fucked forever, you know? I think we discount sometimes how much our like environment has an impact on the choices we make, because we want to feel
also really
like,
forgiving too, right? Like I don't beat my children, and I took some pretty good beatings as a kid. Like at some point you are responsible for your own actions.
I mean, I don't care to look at like responsibility is boring to me, in that like it seems like a thing where it's just like, oh, like who, blah, blah, blah. I'm just more interested in like, how are you going to act in these certain conditions, right? So like, are you responsible for your actions? Ultimately, you're responsible for every action you do. But that question doesn't get us anywhere. It's more like, why do you do the things that you do? Why are you shooting up heroin in a fucking alleyway? Like, did you grow up from an early age aspiring to be a fucking homeless dude sucking dick for drug money? Was that your goal as a child? Or what the fuck went wrong, right? Yeah, were you eating? Yeah, like what went wrong in your life that caused this to happen? And what can we do to keep that from happening to future people so that the people aren't making these horrible decisions is like what I'm generally concerned.
I don't think is send that guy to college over someone who didn't mess up, who did take the straight and narrow, who was responsible with their life. Because the thing about college is it's kind of a zero-sum game, right? Like some people get it, some people don't. It's not as if we can just give it to everybody. There's a cutoff, and some people get in and some don't. So it should be merit-based. That seems fair.
Yeah. We should wrap it up soon.
Oh, sure.
Mal and I have got to be up early. Also, Woody finished my degree at 22, so fuck you.
Oh no, I think I misunderstood what he was saying when I think he was saying this is the stage in life where they're proud of themselves for having these accomplishments. So I wasn't saying that you took till 27 to finish school. I was saying
I'm not trying to like.
I was saying that like, you know, when he talks about that stage in life, I'm like, yeah.
I feel you. Then I misunderstood. You're misunderstood.
Well, be sure to.
I'm not necessarily trying to like shit on people that are like doing like the straight and narrow. Like that's great, but it's like I remember that like when I went into college, I almost went into college as a sophomore. I took an insane amount of math. I took so many AP classes, dual enrollment classes in high school that I almost went into college as a sophomore. I consider myself to be a pretty bright person. I went in for a music degree and I flunked out of college in like my junior year, and it's because I was working 60 hours a week because I didn't have any help at all. Once I was past 16, my parents were gone. They moved to another state, and I had no help in my life. And I remember sitting in like a practice room one day with my little saxophone quartet, listening to another girl talk about how like, oh shit, dude, like, do any of you guys work? Like, I'm so fucked on homework. And I remember saying like, oh yeah, dude, like, do you work too? Like, yeah, it's like pretty rough. And she's like, yeah, like they just upped my hours. I was only doing 12 hours a week, and now I'm doing 15, and I don't have any time. And meanwhile, I'm like tired out of my fucking blown out of my mind because I'm working like overnight shifts, like 10 hours a day, like 6 days a week, like to pay for everything. And it's like, oh fuck, like you're so lucky that you could go to school. Like if I would have had parents to pay my way through school, I would have graduated with a degree 100%. It's a fucking music degree. I know I can get that degree. But like due to the fact that I had to work on my way through it, like I don't know, it feels like I got really fucked, you know? And then to listen to people that never had to work try to levy claims is like, well, maybe that person is just lazy, or maybe they didn't accomplish much. Like nobody today ever tells me that I'm stupid or I'm an idiot, but I flunked out of music school and I was working as a fucking carpet cleaner making $20,000 a year. My life I was an abject failure in life in every single measurable way. And I got really lucky that I happened to grow up at the right time to get into streaming. And, you know, I knew a lot of stuff because I was lucky enough to grow up with video games and shit that I could turn it into a career. But I'm like one or two decisions away from being like a loser that is losing his house, has horrible credit, and is just fucked in every measurable aspect in life.
I think everybody is. Everyone's only a heroin addiction away.
Yeah, so I'm on the other side of that. Like I work during the day and I put myself through school at night. Now I recognize it's a little cheaper back in the 90s and 2000s, but I got 2 bachelor's degrees and 1 master's degree, and the whole time, you know, worked all day, went to school at night. It was a tremendous amount of work. You know, the thing I keep remembering is I couldn't watch a movie. I couldn't watch a single 2-hour show and not think like, man, this is a serious waste of time. I have a project due, a paper due. I have all these things that are occupying my time. And I feel like I earned my stuff. You know, I did that. It took 12 years of that lifestyle.
Sure. And that's awesome.
So, yeah and it's merit-based. You know,
yeah. I mean, like, I guess, like,
you wouldn't take off my straight and narrow. Well, actually, I worked so hard because maybe I didn't go straight and narrow in high school. I could have set myself up for success as a high schooler. But, you know, I did that whole thing. And then to say, like, no. You know, you had parents. Your dad went to college, and didn't leave your mom. So really, you didn't accomplish anything. It's like, man, really? Huh.
I guess like what it feels to me is that like if you're in a really well-off place, if you're born in a really well-off place, there are so many opportunities in front of you that for you to end up a fuck up at the end of that, you must have fucked up so much to actually ruin your life. Like I know people that took 7 years to get their bachelor's degree that lived at home until they were fucking like 26, 27 years old because their parents loved them and would take care of them and all that shit. But when you're on the other end of things and you're kind of like in a fuck spot, say like where I am, it feels like you're sliding down a fucking building and there's like one ledge in, like behind you or below you. And if you don't catch that one fucking ledge, that like one opportunity, you're fucked in life completely. And that when people act like everybody has the same opportunities because like I made it, you know, I did well, I could just as easily come out and say like, well, look, guys, I was a broke carpet cleaner and, you know, I made it, you know, you should all be able to make it too. The reality is like I could have been one or two mistakes away from missing all of this and just being a carpet cleaner for the rest of my life and blowing my brains out, you know? Like
I have such a different philosophy and experience than
man.
you, right? Like so in high school, I fucked up, right? I graduated with a 1.98, lowest GPA of anyone I ever knew. Got into college because I could swim, which was helpful. And I got good grades in there. And then because I'm a jackass, got thrown out of the dorms. Grades tanked again, right? Fucked up. Went to night school. And, you know, then I started going to night school, producing. Didn't like my first career, accounting. Picked up a second degree, MIS. Produce. Then, you know, I finished MIS. Felt like I didn't know as much as the comp sci guys. Got a master's degree. You know, just keep going. You can fuck up. You know, choose the wrong major, choose the wrong career, get bad grades again. Life is long. If you keep plugging away at this thing, you'll get what you want. There is no, like, I'm on the edge of a mountain. If I fall off, then that's my last chance. Last chance? Why? Just do more.
No, that's so not true, though. If you're stuck in
I did it twice, 3 times. Like, how's it not true?
You can be stuck in spots in your life. If you're like in your early 20s and you didn't go to school and maybe you fucked up and had a kid or something, or you're working a job, like you don't always have the opportunity to attend a night school. Maybe you don't have one near you, or maybe you don't even have the money to really do it. Like where you don't have the extra time to commit to something. Where you could be stuck on like a really
night school near you. My commute was 2 hours to night school.
Not everybody can make a 2-hour commute. Like not everybody has the
really?
access to transportation. Yeah, really. Not everybody has a car where they could drive to.
It's not a lot of easy, but like it's hard work. It's fucking really hard. It dominates your entire life. That was my 20s. Like gone. Like I just
I mean, like
I didn't have
some
a 20s.
people can do it, and it's awesome that they can. But the expectations that we place on people that are fucked are so much higher than other people that when they don't make it, it just feels bad to kind of shit on them for it. I guess. Maybe I'm too much of a bleeding heart. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like life is long. Opportunities come. It never stops. There is no like, oh, well, slipped. You know, I'm carpet cleaning until death
if
now.
You're like 32 and you're like a blue-collar worker that never went to college, I
I'm
don't
glad
feel like you have many opportunities.
Because I was 32 still in school, and I had lots of classmates. At night school, if you go to class at night, there's lots of adults in there. You know, people who were over 30 who decided, like, you know what? I've noticed that the path to better success is college. So here I am. And it's a pretty neat dynamic if you ever go to night school. The way that the professors interact with the students is a little different. It's like an adult doing adult thing.
Sure. I feel like if I were to look up outcomes, though, for people in their 30s working blue-collar work, the number of them that go to college is probably pretty low compared to the number of people like in their 20s or early 20s or late teens that like I'm sure the one-offs can happen. It just those always seem to be the exceptions, right? Rather than like this should be expected of every person. Like most people can accomplish this.
Those are the hardworking people. It's hard. I mean, extreme hardworking people are rare. There's plenty of people who will just give up after the first the first hurdle, and if the second one comes along, they're like, "Wow, these hurdles are never going to end. Oh, this is the second one," and they give up there. But I mean, what is the guy who jumped through a dozen hurdles?
The difference is if you're born into a really wealthy family, you might never have to jump like a really difficult hurdle. Like everything is kind of laid out in such an easier way in front of you that.
I mean, you keep saying these, and I'm gonna keep pointing at Woody's gamer tag over there. He was born into a wealthy family, and they were like, "Fuck you, earn it."
Yeah. Yeah, Woody's actually a great example of this.
Well, I mean, I'm a great example. I can point to myself because I didn't have help and I did it, and I'm doing incredibly well now compared to where I came from, and I didn't have any help doing it. So, I mean, I could point to myself as an example, but like, it just feels like
the one thing that I feel like you said that's held true is expectations are high, and I think that helped drive me a lot. You know, college was 13th grade. I was always expected to go to college from as long as I can remember anything about school, you know, and, you know, I bet Taylor's in the same position where, you know, from the time he was a kid, they expected him to go to 13th grade. And, you know, there were times when I can remember I'd make like $100,000 a year, 120 grand a year. And my father was just like, you know, there's going to be a time, Woody, when you want actual good money, you know. I know you're living the life with just working 40 or 50 hours.
Probably felt like shit.
Yeah.
After you said that, you're like, are you kidding me?
And, you know, so expectations are high and they can kind of drive you. And that is a thing. But, you know, I also feel like it sucks away a lot of the accomplishment that, you know, if you say like, oh, your parents, thought you could do it, so therefore it really wasn't you doing it. Like, I don't know if I buy that.
Sure.
Okay.
We can agree to disagree. I mean, we can hammer away at this for like hours, but yeah, no, I definitely understand where you're coming from.
I know Kyle's every time things get political, Kyle's usually looking like, what's the next topic? But thank you for indulging me. I thought we'd just do this for the last 9 minutes, and it turned out to be the last 59 minutes.
60 minutes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, ended up working out.
Steve, what do you think of the whole separating families at the border thing?
Oh, man. Wow, we're pretty late into this. I don't know. I thought it was funny that Trump said that he couldn't do anything about it and complained about it, and then 2 days of bad press coverage, somehow he made that go away real fast.
Yeah?
Yeah, he handled it like a complete idiot.
Yeah. Which he seems to do that a lot.
I'm shocked that he would deviate from the truth.
Whoa, really? Trump?
Yeah.
Being dishonest about something? The guy that said 3 million illegals voted in our election and then disbanded the organization that he put together to track that? Or
hey, you didn't prove they didn't.
Oh, that's true. Oh, God. Trump lies about it. So, did you see the video of the letter that he read where he was bragging about how amazing the letter was from North Korea? And then at the end of the video, like 6 minutes later, he's like, I haven't read it yet.
It was like a costume letter. It was like extra large and everything. It was like
he is an expert at shooting himself in the foot over and over.
But it doesn't matter.
Needlessly.
His fans don't care. They worship the ground, like anything this guy says. And like he's in this perfect position where if he says a lie, it's just to trigger the libs. And so like it's fine if he's lying. He's doing it to trigger the right people, and that's what makes it epic or whatever. And it's like, okay, well you have a paradigm where literally nothing he says is ever wrong, because if it is wrong, he's doing it just to be funny. So like when he says he had like a landslide election win, which is patently not true, we can very easily look up the numbers. Like it's just an epic troll for the libs. It's just like, yeah, there's a lot of shit like that. It makes me really uncomfortable that he can just tell kind of like flat out lies, I think.
Yeah, it seems like as the nation gets more divided, it's almost like a sports team. I used to root for the Philadelphia Flyers. And still do sometimes. And they have this guy, Eric Lindros, who was chippy, right? He played strong. He finished his checks. We all loved him. Every other team hated him, right? He broke Jeremy Roenick's jaw. He smashed
Everybody liked that because he was a prick.
And it's just like, yeah, but if he's on your team, you love the guy. You like your own dirty players. And somehow that circles back to Trump in my mind, where he do or say anything, and people just root for him.
Yeah, on both sides changing their positions, like, as he says them, where it's like all these, for an example, on the right, people being like, free trade, this is so important, free trade. And then he's like, that's a terrible idea. These are awful deals, the worst deals. And then suddenly everybody's like, yeah, terrible deals. Read it, make steel and aluminum expensive as fuck. Like,
it's one of the most insane things to me was like listening to my mom, who when I grew up, I was a diehard conservative. And my parents are still diehard conservative, ride or die, fucking bleed red conservatives. And I remember
they bleed
growing
red,
up,
do they?
They bleed red. Well, technically, your blood when you bleed and it gets deoxygenated is kind of a darkish color. I don't know, but like, so like my mom, I remember listening to her like as a kid, she would like cry, telling me like what Bill Clinton did was one of the worst things ever. It's not about lying under oath or any of that shit. It's just the way that he treats women. That rolls down, Stevie, from the top. You don't understand, because my mom was in the Air Force, and she's like, when the president, when the commander-in-chief is allowed to treat women that way, my commanding officer, my fellow Air Forcemen, like everybody's going to do the same to me. And it's like, it's ridiculous. And then listening to her defend Trump, like the grab him by the pussy shit. She's like, that's just locker room talk, Stevie. All boys talk that way. And it's like, oh, it's strange that like you have such a different tone. Like, I wish I could have another world where Obama said that, and I could listen to the fucking outrage of the Republicans that get mad when he like asks for Dijon mustard or wears like a tan suit. I wish I could hear the world where Trump is saying where Obama is saying that his daughter is very attractive and that I think he would consider fucking her. I think that was something that Trump said, or in like kind of lighter words.
Yeah.
Oh, dating her. Okay, like on Howard Stern's show, where he could have like multiple wives, or not multiple wives, but like be divorced. Like, not to play the race card, but I'm pretty sure that if Obama would have come in as a black man with a divorced fucking family and then brought in like a wife overseas and shit, you would have definitely heard Republicans harp on their fucking family values shit.
Twice divorced, like, right? 5 kids, 3 wives.
If Obama would have fucking fucked a porn star and then paid to cover it up, oh, that would have been great.
The only thing that like makes that different for the populace is that people knew Trump was like this going in. Like, it would be much more shocking to see someone like Obama doing that, because I don't think most people peg him as the kind of guy who would do that.
But if
Fucking
Obama
porn
was
stars.
running and people knew that, I think it would be a big deal. Like, look at how you get the Republicans crying today, where Trump is like, I can't do my job when people are mean to me. And Trump was one of the guys that led the fucking movements that asserted that Obama was born in fucking Kenya, right? The birther movement, like that was largely Trump.
I don't think he can complain about the name calling or meanness when like every one of his like very
Lion Ted,
very like Lion Ted,
Little
Cruz,
Rubio,
like those things stuck, and so for that reason, like it was very good, branding, I guess, to brand someone else as that to win, but then to turn around and play the now you got to be
Victim
cool
card.
to me, like it doesn't wash.
You talked about the hypocrisy. My parents are on that hardcore. I would stack them up against yours. They so like you said, when Clinton was in office, oh my God, he's our nation's moral leader. It's disgracing the Oval Office, the oral office. They went bonkers on it. My mom said that for the punishment of cheating, he should be killed. She thought they should murder or
traditional conservative values. Yeah.
Capital punishment on Bill Clinton, right? And
he should be beaten to death with a shoe.
Right? That was her stance on this thing. And then W comes along, but with Trump, they say that he got saved either during the election or just prior to it. So all the things he did prior to that don't count. Hey, look, this is my parents talking. We got saved late in life, so we understand what it's like, and all the things you did before you got saved. They're in a whole nother category. They kind of don't count.
That he got saved all of a sudden.
Oh, because he won the election, he has an R next to his name.
Because he's doing the wonderful things now that he's in office, better than they ever hoped he would do. That's where they stand. My favorite of all is my mom has suggested that Michelle Obama is a transvestite or straight up an actual man.
An actual man. That's what I just don't. What would make you think?
I don't know where
like
the
even most
children came from
Republicans
in this
don't
scenario.
Think that he is a Christian. I'm sure he would say he's a Christian. Like, I bet he does.
Trump,
but,
I think so.
Do you really think he's going to, do you really think he's an actual Christian, or is that just a political,
according to polls, 2/3 of Trump supporters believe that Obama is a Muslim.
Well, no. That's fun because he's both a Muslim and Jeremiah Wright, his Christian pastor, is the worst person of all time. You gotta pick what you dislike. It's insane. Way more likely he's a Christian with a crazy pastor than a secret Muslim.
People will dig so hard for these comments on one time there's a videotape of Obama and he whispers to a Russian politician, I can't talk about this much, I'll have more flexibility after the election. That was one Obama thing. And Republicans turn this into a huge thing, okay? And then you get Trump, who has Paul Manafort as his campaign head for 6 months, 159 days or some shit. And they're like, it happens, and it's like, if this was a Democrat, you would lose your fucking mind. Like, Republicans unironically believe that Hillary Clinton takes children to the basement with Anthony Weiner's ex-wife and rapes them in a pizza place, and and it's all off of 2 words in a fucking email where it's this here is actually hyper-coded language for child rapists, and it's okay.
Kyle and Taylor made that argument on this show. They'll deny it now, but they said it.
Oh no,
no. Okay,
they said it.
You're so misleading.
Someone play it back. Play it back. Someone go find it.
No, I encourage someone to go find it.
Yeah.
Because
I love that we're relying on old Iron Trap memoried Woody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do it.
No, what I remember, what we saw and what we said was, this is a really weird way to phrase emails. Why are they writing like this? But that does not mean that you go, these are oddly, strangely phrased emails to, there's a rape ring being led out of a local pizza place. Yeah. That's what we said. You can look at those and be like, yeah, this is oddly written.
It'll be linked on the subreddit. We'll see who's right.
And again, to Occam,
I could be wrong. Happens.
To Occam's razor, did they say a lot of weird shit? Yeah, but they're fucking 60, 70-year-old people writing emails. Have you ever watched your grandparent write an email? It's always very fucking awkward and very weird.
Frustrating.
And it's probably more likely that that's the case than there's a secret fucking child rape ring being ran. Well,
there's no basement at Comet Pizza. That was that was the thing lock
too.
for
not
me.
Even a fucking basement.
No, Woody, you're mistaken there. The basement is behind a poster. If you play Pokemon Red, they can hide these switches behind posters. You will switch that. You will find a secret That is where the rape is happening, folks. Hillary Clinton is a goddamn demon.
Drives me crazy, dude. And I'll like even try to talk to my mom. Like my mom will say things like, Stevie, like I know that 1 million immigrants were bussed into these places to win the elections. And it's like, okay, mom, let's think about this for 1 second. Let's say there were 1 million illegals bussed in. Not even the 3 million they're claiming, 1 million. How many people can fit on a bus? Do you think like 100? Do you think that's like an okay estimate?
Seems high.
Okay, well, okay, let's say 100 people could fit on a bus still. What is that? That's like 10,000 buses of immigrants that are being... But how does nobody have footage of this? Nobody took a picture of these 10,000 buses moving through parts of the U.S. where nobody's seeing like these millions of immigrants. How did nobody catch this? Like in a day and age where I can get video footage of literally fucking anything ever happening, look at all the school shooting shit, right? Like it blows my mind that people... The fake news and the fake narrative shit, like it makes me want to fucking kill myself. It's the worst part of my debates. When I open up a debate and a guy unironically says shit like Hillary Clinton unilaterally sold 1/5 of our uranium to Russia. And it's like, why would you think anyone in our government even has the power to do that? Like, does that really make sense to you? Like, yeah. It's frustrating as fuck.
Well, I'm glad we got a little of it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that kind of is sad today is that I feel like if you are, because I'm actually like pretty right-leaning economically. I'm a very big capitalist, which a lot of my fans hate me because I have a lot of fucking lefty fans now, but I'm a pretty big capitalist, big free market guy. If you are like a sane conservative, I like guns too. There's like, you have no voice right now in the United States, right? Like, what if I believe in free markets and I do believe in capitalism, and you know, I like my Second Amendment and shit, but maybe I also think that sex ed in school is okay, that contraception isn't the fucking devil, that climate change is probably fucking real. Like, where is my voice right now? Like, I feel like I have to be a Democrat because Republicans have just gone so far off the fucking deep end on some shit.
Do you think it's probably real or definitely real?
I mean, like, it's something that, like, the majority of the scientific community not only is of the consensus that global warming is happening, but that it also is primarily due to man-made changes,
so it's
right?
Probably real.
Like, most likely, yeah. I mean, and I actually looked up yesterday. I was curious because it's been so fucking hot here. And I was like, you know, the record high temps are always like really crazy. I'm curious if we're like close to record high temps in Omaha. And I just like happened to look it up. And it's like over the past weekend, Omaha set like 3 days in a row of consecutive record high temps. And I'm like, holy shit. Yeah.
Neither side of this has been comfortable because we broke a ton of records in winter this year. We had like 3 weeks straight of like 0 degrees or some shit. And then now in summer, it's the complete opposite shit. I was thinking it was going to get a little more comfortable for a little while. You know, like we're in the golden age of global warming. Mm-hmm. Like it should be the fun part now. Like we're not in day after tomorrow yet. Like we should be enjoying it. But no, it's just getting more extreme on both ends. Or maybe it's not. It always seems like it is. But then apparently it hasn't changed that much. But then they'll say like, well, fraction of percents or small percents changes in this amount of time actually is pretty big. You just don't know because you don't have this perspective.
The scary thing right now that's scary for Republicans is that Trump is like a full-on like borderline kind of fascist cult of personality that is causing a lot of problems in the Republican Party, such that if you are a mainstream Republican, you're in this very awkward situation where you don't necessarily want to align completely with Trump's agenda, but you have to or your party will fucking crucify you.
Trump will use his bully pulpit to attack other Republicans.
There's a lot of mainstream Republican senators, you know, politicians who really don't like him.
Well, and if you're like a Paul Ryan and you're a McConnell, you're in a very weird place because the Republicans can't turn their back on Trump because then they'll lose so much ground that they've gained because you don't want to alienate Trump's fan base now from your party. You'll be completely fucked. And the Democrats will gain so much ground if you do it. So you're like in this really weird spot as an establishment Republican, or even like a Tea Party, where like you don't necessarily, you're like, okay, like I was in favor of less immigration, but I don't know how I feel about building a fucking wall on our border. That seems a little bit extreme. You know?
I agree with you on the cult of personality thing. Totally. I think that's undeniable. It being fascistic, I don't think is true at all. Like no fascist ever has been able to be torn on and ripped by every pundit ever, you know, freely. You know,
but like the scary thing is that Trump has made statements. Trump's understanding of our First Amendment rights are very frightening to me in the U.S. He's made a couple of statements that are instant deal breakers for me. I remember one tweet he made, and I'm sure you could still find it, is he was saying that people that burn the American flag should have their citizenship revoked. That's a pretty big one for me. That's holy shit.
That's terrible. That's dumb.
That was a horrible thing. He relentlessly attacks the press, and not like I think the press is shit, but like I want to open up libel law so that I can sue the press for fake news. And his constant attacking of the press is something that makes me scared too, because like you don't want the president of your country attacking the thing that's supposed to exist theoretically to kind of keep the, Congress and the president honest. Like that the attacks on the free press are very frightening to me as well. There's that, and then there's the extreme hyper nationalism, like this weird isolationist foreign policy that we're taking, where we're kind of fucking all of our allies, fuck everybody, tariffs on everything. We're going to do everything in America, like, fighting with like Canada. Like, how do you get into fights with Canada as the United States president? It doesn't even make sense, all of those things just kind of worry me a little bit. Yeah.
How do you feel about abortion? Because I would predict that I don't know if Roe versus Wade is going to get completely overturned, but I think abortion laws are going to change in the next 5 years for sure.
Yeah, it's possible.
I think
it's likely.
I don't think they're going to. If they do it, they're not going to get rid of it. They'll just probably implement that 20-week ban or whatever they were trying to get done. But I mean, I don't want it overturned.
What I've been seeing
creating black markets
as a
tends
likely
to be a bad idea.
It stops being illegal at the federal level, and then it just goes to the states. So they're
You don't
saying
want
like
that.
even 2-3 years from now, it's illegal in 20 states. You just have to drive to get what you need.
Yeah.
But the problem is the people that need the abortions the most are the people that can't afford to do that. This is why I hate like Dave Rubin, the dumbest fucking guy in political commentary today, makes these stupid. I fucking hate Dave Rubin. I've wanted to get on a show with that dude so hard. I would eviscerate that guy. He's so fucking. I don't even know how he can sit up straight in a chair because that guy has no fucking spine. Like I would
What do
figure
you
he'd
hate
be.
about him most? Like,
He takes these. He basically is like if you take a babby in high school and introduce him to libertarianism, but they don't think through any of their positions. That's his thing. He's like the first words that would come out of like an Ayn Rand fan's mouth, like, "Oh, free marketplace of ideas, absolutely, totally, no drawbacks, blah 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 blah." But like as soon as you give him like a basic challenge, like, okay, well, what if hate groups capitalize on free speech to inevitably cause violence to others in like kind of third-party ways? What do you think about that? Like. That's something that you need to have an answer for. And you can still be free speech and acknowledge that happens, but like he can't even answer those incredibly basic questions.
if they're inciting violence, though, that wouldn't fall under free speech.
Not inciting violence, but the fact is that if you allow people to have unlimited free speech, there will be groups that arise as a result of that who will, in a roundabout way, encourage violence. That's a fact. Now, whether or not you can say that free speech should or shouldn't be curbed, it is a fact that there are people that will listen to certain extreme ideas who will take on. There was that one shooter, whatever, that had like the Ben Shapiro was like the last 150 tweets that he favorited or some shit. Like these people will be created as a result of allowing more extremist kind of offensive speech out there. Now, again, to be clear, that doesn't mean we should get rid of free speech or even that we should curtail it at all. But you have to know that somebody's going to bring that up and that you need to have a response to that. You have to have something ready to go. And Rubin never does. He did this on Joe Rogan a lot with like abortion, where people were like, where Rubin is like, oh, well, just leave it to the states. And then if you don't like something, you can just go to a different state. Okay, motherfucker, not everybody has the money to drive across state lines to go and do something somewhere. Like somebody somebody, especially you live in the South, you might have to go multiple states away or even one state away. That is prohibitively expensive to the people that are the most impacted by some of these laws. Like what a ridiculous assertion.
Not as expensive as a baby.
A lot cheaper than a condom would probably.
Not
save
as
a lot
expensive as a baby, but like the thing is that like all of these things are weighed unfairly. Like we'll say like, oh well, birth control's cheaper than a baby. Well, sure, but like nobody makes that decision in the heat of the moment. Like I'm about to bust in this girl. Like okay, well we'll be the most financially advantageous thing to do. It's more like if you're somebody that's wealthy, you're already more likely to have access to contraception or to spend money on it or to not be fucking recreationally because you've got more things to do with your free time.
Condoms are free.
In some places, but condoms also fucking suck. Holy shit.
Condoms are the worst, and we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
I don't mind condoms. I'm the only man on the planet that doesn't mind condoms.
How can you not mind your dick just being numb?
If I was with a girl
it's not
and
numb.
she was
It's
like, if
worse.
I was with a girl and she handed me a condom, I would say, awesome. Do you want me to masturbate into this? Because I am not sticking my dick into you with this impenetrable force field surrounding my dick. Fuck that shit.
It takes the fun out of sex.
I think you're using the wrong condoms. I think you're using the wrong condoms. Have you tried multiple brands?
Unfortunately, I have, yeah. And they,
I use Skin extra thick.
No, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm using the extra thick condoms. But like the thing that sucks is like people always say like, well, you should do this, you should do that. And it's like, yeah, you should. But if you're rich, one, you've got a million more options available to you, right? If you take a group of people and you provide one group only condoms and the other group gets condoms, or for women, they have the pill, they've got the vaccination, or not vaccination, but you get like an injection, or you've got like IUDs, intrauterine devices, like 50 million types of like wealthy birth control. Not only do these people have a higher chance of being protected, but also if they fuck up, they've got more access to abortion abortion as well. They can take time off work to get an abortion. They can afford the procedure. They can go to where they need to go to get it. Traveling is not a big deal to them. Like everything is just kind of
stairs everywhere. I don't want to hear about cost.
Everything is just like weighted against you when you're poor, and people don't acknowledge that sometimes. It just kind of triggers the fuck out of me. That no.
I don't really follow Dave Rubin's stuff. I've watched a couple of his episodes, but it's more kind of like guest based when I'll tune in. But he doesn't really seem to take hard stances for the most
because he's
part.
too much of an intellectual coward to do it. He's too stupid to research the positions, and he's too much of a fucking spineless hack to actually take a strong position on anything. I fucking hate Rubin. He is like the most hated person. I'm sorry if Rubin like watches this podcast. You guys don't hate him like I do, okay? But I hate him.
I'm starting to hate him more. I've never even heard of him, and I hate him now.
We had him on the show, Kyle.
Oh, did we?
Yikes.
Never even heard of the guy. Yeah, a couple of years ago.
That's funny. I forgot. What I hate is not necessarily a particular guy. This behavior of like a political expert, usually from the right, destroying or eviscerating or whatever some college student who's only paid attention to this topic for the last 6 months. Milo gets a lot of that. Ben Shapiro gets a lot of that.
That's like a meme now in like some other like right-wing circles and left-wing even, where it'll say like, because it's usually like Ben Shapiro destroys this person. Now they're saying like Ben Shapiro mutilates and murders 2 young liberals as he tears their skin off and flays them with facts. It's like that kind of shit. It
is the ultimate irony to watch that guy scream facts over feel so much with his fucking yarmulke on. Like this guy goes and worships the fucking Torah. Like I don't know if you guys are atheists or not. Maybe that's not. We're like, oh god, that guy drives me fucking crazy. Holy shit.
You're not religious, are you?
No, none of us are religious.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh man, dude.
We don't have any imaginary friends.
I've got my brony friends.
One of the big frustrating things that a lot of like debate related stuff too is that like when you talk about like conservative destroys somebody else, the right leaning arguments are always so easy and the left leaning ones are so fucking hard, and it gets really frustrating because like in order to get like a lot of complicated positions, there's like a lot of prerequisite knowledge required. So like if I'm arguing with somebody over say like the position of black people in the United States, right? What do we have to do to help black people? The person on the right's argument is, well, everybody can be a success story. Here's a story of a random poor person. He's rich. Everybody just needs to do that. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, blah, blah, blah. Well, what's your thing, Stephen? What's keeping black people down here? It's like, okay, well, hold on. Well, so firstly, you've got the realities of generational wealth, right? If your grandparents did well, your parents probably did well, you're probably going to do well. You've got stickiness at the ends of economic quintiles of percentages. You've got things like, lead factors into crime levels, and black people are disproportionately in houses that contain lead. And this link is like really well researched, really, really well established. You've got policies like redlining and redlining and not gerrymandering, gentrification, things that have pushed black people into fucked neighborhoods, and you've got like the crack. There's like all these things that I have to explain to even get you to like my side of the argument, and I feel like I've already lost when I have to start going down these really complicated passages to explain like, this is why this group of people might be fucked, and then the other guy just has to utter like 2 lines, and he's already like fucking won the argument,
The other problem is, and I might be looking through my blue lenses. I feel like on the red side, they often have a very low standard of proof for what they want to believe.
I argued with this guy yesterday, actually. He's like Anthony something, the black conservative online guy. He's got like 200,000 YouTube subs. I don't know, like the hugest guy. I
heard of him.
I was arguing with this guy. So this guy knows who I am because do you remember that Joyner Lucas song, I'm Not Racist, where like the white guy raps and then the black guy counter it?
Yeah, it's really good.
Sure. So this guy did like an observation of that, or his reaction, and I saw that he was conservative. I was like, oh no, this isn't going to be what I think it is, right? And it was. It was him listening to this rap, and in 20 minutes he agreed with every single racist viewpoint of the white guy and said everything the black guy said was wrong. So I did like a reaction to the reaction. I was like, this is insane. Well, this guy showed up in my YouTube chat yesterday because I'm streaming on YouTube, and he comes on to debate me, and I wanted to fucking blow my brains out. This guy is walking through every fucking racist talking point, unironically. It's a black guy that I've ever heard saying things like, so I bring up like, okay, well, he's like, how are black people held down here? It's like, okay, what about things like redlining that existed in like the 50s?
What is redlining? I don't think I've heard of that.
So redlining was the idea that basically a long time ago, it was official policies in businesses to not loan to black people. Like as a bank, you would say, we do not give loans to black people, period. Like that's it. Mm-hmm. And his excuse for that was like, well, it wasn't just discrimination against black people. They just didn't lend to people with low credit. And I'm like, really, dude? And then he's telling me like, well, yeah, my grandpa had a house in West Virginia. And it's like, okay, that's like a one-off thing. And he just kept going on with like these anecdotes. Conservatives love one-off fucking stories. He's like, I got stories from my grandma, and she told me that the KKK would ride around, and when they went to neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, they were handing out toys and stuff. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
We don't hear about individual stories of kids, illegal immigrants coming from Honduras who just wanted to learn to draw. And shit like
and
that.
That's the most frustrating thing to me. Like, illegal immigrants are all fucking criminal fucking masterminds, MS-13, that are infesting the country, in Trump's words. And it's like, okay, well, where are these same stories of like this poor illegal kid, this family that, like, if I was in their position, I would do the same fucking thing every time, right? If I'm a father, fuck the country. I have zero allegiance to my country. My family will always come first. If I think that I can forge a better life for my family illegally immigrating to another country, I'll do it 9 out of 10 times, right? Assuming I can make the journey and not fucking die, or it might even be worth the risk, which some people think it is,
Do you think the U.S. then has like a moral obligation to import people from all over the world who are struggling in those ways?
I wouldn't say to import people, because I don't think it's realistic that a country can take on an entire other population. But when you talk about like deporting every illegal immigrant, like, this is a fantasy idea. One, it's not even economically feasible. Two, it's probably immoral. I never argue morality with conservatives, because as far as I'm concerned, they have none. So I usually just try to argue like empirical, like economic realities, like, hey, illegals help our economy a lot. Just make them legal, bring them under the fucking tax base. Like, it makes sense, And you can tell like Republicans are so not concerned with economic outcomes. When you look at things like DACA, like we paid for these people to be educated. Now they are educated. These are some of our best citizens, because DACA people have no criminal record. They can't. A lot of them went to school. They register with us. They get temporary Social Security numbers so they can pay taxes. And now that we spent all that money educating them, you want to ship them back to Mexico? What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why would you want to do that?
They all went to school. It's a DACA requirement.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think that equating all illegal immigrants with the DACA recipients is dishonest. I mean, that's not fair.
It is dishonest, but DACA is a thing that Republicans attack, like, hardcore. And it's like, if there was any group of immigrants that you should be championing, it should be the DACA kids. Like,
there are bigger fish to fry. If your concern is legal immigration, there's no reason to start with the DACA recipients.
Well, sure, but Trump was the one that rescinded the DACA thing by executive action.
But it follows a pattern of kind of hurting children, DACA recipients, the kids that come across the border, as a way to strong arm the liberals into agreeing to the conservative wants, like a wall.
Yeah.
I don't think the wall is ever going to happen. I think we could be much better served just increasing money for border security as it currently exists, instead of building who knows how expensive wall. Like, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think even most people like Ann Coulter, who that was her big thing of like a wall, like, they even have to be coming to the realization, like, this isn't going to happen.
Sure. Well, that's because even Republicans, and this is where I talk about a disconnect between Republicans and Trump. Republicans in general, I'll catch flack for saying this, but like, Trump, in my opinion, is kind of like openly racist in a lot of shit that he says. Republicans aren't generally that politically stupid. So a lot of Republicans don't want to argue for a wall because they know that it hurts them in elections back home. So you're in this really weird spot where you got to go to the table with Democrats. And this is why they're having so much trouble getting legislation passed, where you're trying to represent the Republican agenda, but there's also this weird agenda that Trump wants to push, and he won't support you unless you're pushing it. But then no Democrat is going to agree with it. So you're in this like weird like two-way fracture in the Republican Party. And that's like one of the big reasons why nothing is getting done in Congress, even though the Republicans own the Senate, the House, and the executive branch, and soon the judicial branch. It's because Trump has all these like really weird desires that I don't think even mainstream Republicans are totally behind.
No, he's as a Republican president, he's not conservative by Republican standards. No, not at all. I mean, he's against free trade, which and I've heard people make the case, oh, he's using this as an anchor point, as he does with all negotiations, and it's like, well, I mean, it's getting to the point already where we're seeing cost
trade
increases
wars.
On these trade wars, and so it's like, well, how long are we gonna
what dimension of chess are we at this point, right?
No, we're playing rooftop backgammon. Like, we're playing totally different sports. But
here's something, even though I'm the bluest guy here, aside from Steve, and I bet I disagree on. Trump signed an executive order saying that you can no longer look at race during college admissions, if I understand the order right. And I think I agree with Trump in there. This should just be merit-based. And part of it is this. You've mentioned, like redlining and, historical economical deficiencies. The people applying to college next were born in 2001. Right, 2001. That's like recent history to me. 2001. I was working at Cisco. I think I was like that. That to me is not the olden days when these kids were born. This reality of segregation and slavery. They are so far removed from that time when the planet was still black and white. It doesn't. Merit-based admissions just seem fair to me.
Sure. So the thing that is very like intangible about that kind of stuff is that one thing that we don't I'm gonna dip into the topic of privilege here, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, I understand. But one thing that we don't count on is all of the advantages that we have being born into certain types of families. So if you are somebody that is born into a family with a mom and a dad, where the mom can stay home and work, and both parents are college educated, if you just run like a Bayesian analysis on this type of person, the chances that they will be successful and college educated like grows dramatically versus like single parent households where only some colleges completed, where no college is completed, where no high school is completed, based on the income of the parents. You have all of these things that can predict future success of a person without even fucking knowing anything about them, right? Show me two people, show me one of them born to a middle-class family with a stay-at-home mom and whose earnings are in the six-figure range versus another one with a single crack mom who has like earnings in the welfare range, who is like living off of EBT, right? I can give you outcomes. I can be very predictive of the types of people that will be created in these environments. And the problem is
them into college, you're setting them up for failure in a way. There's a reason that like, if you're trying to get into Yale, for example, and they're like, all right, this student's black, they have a test score that if they were white or Asian, we would never even consider them, but they're black and we need to let them in. You're letting someone in who's not prepared for that elite university, and they failed disproportionately because of that. Because
and there are
not
arguments
prepared for that.
Sure,
yeah, and there are arguments
on top
to be
of that,
made for those. Yeah,
you're making this argument as it's socioeconomic, and I oh my god, this sounds so racist to say it, but they've done when they adopt a person and put them in these families that would set them up for success, they don't do as well as their natural born children, right? So some of this is just merit based. It's not just a socioeconomic disadvantage.
Oh man, we got a race realist argument. You're referring to the Minnesota Twin studies there?
I read it in the bell curve. I don't know what. I forget where he came from.
The bell curve. Charles Murray. Oh, I'm very familiar with a lot of these things.
Yeah, it just seems like merit based is fair, right?
Yeah. I guess like at the end of the day, what I would say is that like the thing that feels shitty is that if you go back to the 50s and 60s, people weren't targeting socioeconomically disadvantaged groups of people. People were targeting black people. And even to today, like now that we have all these black people in these like kind of most fucked ways, now when we have things that aren't racist, like the war on drugs, which isn't racist, but it kind of is.
You're literally talking about these kids' grandparents, right? Like I've got a girl.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, I've got a girl who's in college now, right? Not applying to college next year, but going in to be a sophomore. And I was born in '73, and you're talking about the 50s, right? Like that's ages ago. Like at some point we get to make this stuff merit based.
Sure, but I mean, like, if I take any Kennedy that's born in the United States, like, do you think that these people all of them are super overachievers and they're working really hard all the time? Or do you think a lot of these guys have been born into families that have been rich for generations?
Weren't you fussing about individual examples just 10 minutes ago?
Well, I could point to economic data that shows that people. So we divide wealth into quintiles, right? People that are born into the top quintile of wealth have like a 70% chance of remaining there throughout their entire life. People born into the bottom
who are born
quintile,
to NBA stars have a really good chance of being good at basketball, right? Both of Michael Jordan's kids played Division I ball.
And this is also assuming like those quintiles don't like move around. Like you're not statically stuck in that third quintile. A lot of it has to do with age and career progression. Like it's like people tend to go up those. Maybe you're not going to make it to that top one or even the second one, but you are more likely to ratchet that up. So if you broke those down by age, like you're going to see a lot more young people in those lower income areas.
Well, not if you're born into an upper income area. That's the thing. But like, it's called in economics. It's called stickiness at the ends, right? It's a super well observed phenomenon in the U.S. that if you're born really well off, you tend to be really well off. If you're born really fucked off, you tend to be kind of fucked. People can move, and it does happen. And there is some economic mobility in the U.S. It's not quite as good as other Western nations. But the thing is that just like if your grandparents were super fucked, there's a decent chance that your parents were pretty fucked, which means there's an okay chance that you're going to be kind of fucked. Like you can work your way out of it, but the amount of work that you have to do compared to another person born into like a much better circumstance, it just feels kind of shitty for those people to talk down on the other people. Like not to sound like really rude or mean or anything, but like if you were born into a family that was like doing well, is like a middle class family, and you got like your bachelor's degree and now you have like out of college a 60, 70,000 year job, you didn't really do much. Like you just kind of showed up every day to your life and like you did it. But I mean, you kind of did what was expected of you. But then to turn around and look at somebody that was born to a single parent household, whose mom like was never home, who was working 3 jobs, who barely graduated high school, and then to look at that person and go, well, why didn't you graduate college like I did? It's like, motherfucker, you didn't do anything.
I love this notion that
you know?
underachieving parents have so much less time, right? Like, oh, your father was an attorney. He probably just fucked off all the time and stayed home and played with you as a child, taught you how to play baseball. You know, but your mom, she worked at cash registers, so she most likely was so busy she could have never helped you with your homework.
Well, what I mean is like you have to acknowledge that like having a stay-at-home mom is a massive advantage. With the fact that you can go home and have a parent there that can help you with homework, that's invested in your success, that cares about you, that is monumentally helpful to a lot of children versus being in a single parent household where the parent just doesn't really have time to spend with you.
Not having a father in the home is one of the largest predictors for
of
like
being a criminal,
violence, acting out, being a criminal, not having a positive real male role model in the family.
But does that mean that you take a kid who followed the straight and narrow and not give him the opportunity that the other fucked one did?
No, I was just saying that's true. It is badly impactful. But how does that tie to, well, now your test scores are lower, so sorry, Mr. Asian guy, you get the boot because we got to let this guy in who is probably not going to succeed because we got to hit our quotas. You know, like when this guy could go to a university that is more apt to fit his needs and actually succeed.
Sure. And I think, to be fair, like, I don't know if I feel comfortable, like, literally putting in a black person over a white person. Like, when I think of, like, affirmative action programs, like, more beneficial ones, I think, are, like, there are groups of people that will come together and raise money for a cause. So maybe you make, like, a black scholarship program or something. So, like, if a black person gets that scholarship, it's fine. But if you would say something like, well, no affirmative action, like, those people wouldn't raise that money. So it's not like a white person is necessarily losing out just because, you know, there were these types of programs that existed in the first place.
Well, by definition, someone's losing out. There are a limited number of spots.
Well, because they wouldn't. Well, is that true in like maybe like an Ivy League school?
He was talking about raising money, not spots.
Yeah,
like a scholarship. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if a black organization wants to start a black scholarship fund, fine, go for it.
That feels shitty to me. Like the litmus test I always apply to these things is if you flip it and say, hey, we're going to raise money for white people and only white people can benefit from this, that feels shitty too. Like it just doesn't feel, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it because I think it even ties into like free speech and liberty and such. Like you should be able to.
If it's a private organization that's like about black needs or whatever, they have the right to do that. That's their money. They can give it to someone else.
Yeah, I agree that it's the right to do it. I also agree that it kind of feels shitty to do anything based on race. I don't like that. But
I agree with you.
Yeah. But, it just feels shitty to have like generations and generations of like wealth built up by white people, like literally through racial policies against black people. And then when we make that illegal, now we're like, whoa, hold on. Like, we don't want to do anything race-based now. It's like, okay, well, fuck, we kind of got fucked a long time ago in a lot of ways.
A long time ago, there was some fucking. There's no doubt about that. But we're talking about like the 50s. Yeah.
2 generations isn't
2 generations
that long ago.
Is the difference between me and my grandfather. My grandfather came off a boat. He was poor. My grandmother also came off the boat. They beat their children. My grandfather ran away. My grandmother stayed around, worked a cash register at JCPenney. When my grandfather ran away, my father said, great, this is an improvement on our situation. And my father made a lot out of himself. He did fantastic. I don't have that same story to tell because I was raised in a good... Well, like,
a lot of behaviors are a lot of your behaviors are so predicted. Like even I think your political affiliation isn't that like heritable to like 80%, like 0.8 heritability, like a political affiliation.
Not in my family, but it may be. I wouldn't be sure.
So like there's just so much that passes from your parents that I think people kind of take for granted. That like I don't know. It's
yeah. It's anything but merit based feels really shitty.
Yeah.
Can the record show that I did not initiate this topic because my fans,
and you didn't say
my
the
fans
old
all
F-word.
said that I was going to go full blown fucking politics right off the bat. I did not open this can of worms, okay? I will say that the idea that all of us are cool with gay people is pretty interesting in light of a very recent Supreme Court ruling that had to do with a cake shop in Colorado, though. I'm not too sure if I would die on that hill that everybody in America is super cool with the gays, as we would call them, but...
Yeah, there's definitely pockets of people who aren't cool with gays still. I think that's like a losing battle, the same way like guns are a losing battle.
It's clear to me that anyone who makes cakes for a living is probably gay and self-hating, and that was the genesis of all of that.
That doesn't seem like as much of a gay issue as it is a free speech issue, though, right? Because like they had ruled the other way when people refused to make anti-gay cakes, right? Like they're like, oh, whoa, he doesn't have to make that cake.
Who's ordering anti-gay cakes? What would that have on it?
I've never heard this as a Supreme Court thing.
We weren't going to bring that up.
It's interesting that the same group of people that were so upset about the gay cake baker thing seemed to be very upset when Huckabee was ejected from a restaurant. When Sarah Huckabee was ejected, where was the free speech people there? It kind of makes you think, you know?
You're totally right.
I agree.
Glaring hypocrisy. They had every right to tell her to fuck off and leave. It's their business.
It turns out, so maybe you guys can correct me on the Supreme Court ruling, but my understanding is the reason he wasn't forced to do that was that it was an art. Like you can't force a guy to like commission an art piece, which is what a cake is. Now, if he wanted to go in there and buy a cake off the shelf, they would force him to sell it because you can't discriminate on a couple of grounds. They include sexual preference, race, sex, age, I think, is one of them. Disabilities is one of them. Yeah. Yeah. The government has defined things that you're not allowed to discriminate for, but you are allowed to discriminate against douchebags, which is why they would have to sell an off-the-shelf cake to a gay person, but not necessarily Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because you are allowed to discriminate based on douchebaggery.
I mean, I think
they're not a protected group, funny. It turns out.
Which is why I'm no longer allowed at Applebee's.
Okay, so I love and appreciate you, Woody, but everything you just said was so completely wrong. I feel like I'm stepping into all of my triggers here. This is a very popular piece of fake news that a lot of conservatives are spreading about that Supreme Court ruling. So the initial question constitutionally that a lot of people had was, can you compel someone to create art? And if you can, or more importantly, just creating a cake, does that count as compelled art, right? And this is what we were kind of looking to the Supreme Court to decide. Can a baker be forced to bake a cake for a gay person with a gay message? Does that count as compelled art? But the reality was that Supreme Court decision didn't make a ruling on that. So the ruling was called narrow, and a lot of people don't understand what that means because the ruling was actually 7-2, so it wasn't like close. What the narrow ruling meant was that in this very particular case, the Supreme Court decided that the Colorado Commission that was in charge of deciding whether or not that was a hate crime treated the baker incredibly unfairly. That they had made disparaging remarks regarding the guy's religion, and that the Supreme Court didn't feel like the Colorado Commission made a fair ruling in this particular case. So the Supreme Court did not make any statements whatsoever on whether or not baking a cake for a gay person is compelled speech or whether or not that sort of art is like compelled speech. And the ruling only specifically applied to this case of whether or not the Colorado Commission treated that case fairly.
Okay.
Yeah, I did hear that it was, everybody thought, because I saw plenty of conservatives tweeting stuff like, they're calling a 7-2 narrow, trying to trick you. And it's like, well, no, that's not what that means. It's just the scope of what they decided.
Okay, so Supreme Court decisions aside, where do we fall upon this idea? I have a couple of scenarios to lay out there that I'd like to hear people's opinions on. Let's say I go into a baker and I say, hey, I'm marrying my friend Taylor. My life partner Taylor. Finally. I wanted to say Kyle and Taylor, forever, in fondant, and I want 2 grooms on the top, and I want interlinking male gender symbols also in fondant, all the fuck over it, and they say no. Can they be compelled to make that cake? And also, a second cake is being commissioned that day. This time, Woody is getting the cake commissioned. His cake says homosexuality is an abomination, and it's got and
a festive cake.
It's just a white sheet.
It really
cake.
seems like be Steve's cake, but carry on.
It's just a white sheet cake, nothing fancy. It just says homosexuality is an abomination, and they're like, no, absolutely not. I will not make that cake. Can either one of or both of those bakers be compelled, or should they be compelled to make these particular cakes?
Whew, okay, so we're getting into the heavy social issues. In the United States, we have protected classes, and these protected classes generally call under special protections if they're discriminated against in certain matters. So, for instance, I believe race, religion, nation of origin, your sex, and then the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has ruled that this includes like sexual identity. So, like if you're gay or straight. your familial status, if you've got kids, if you're a veteran, if you're disabled. These things are considered protected classes in the U.S. In the United States, what we've decided is that thus far, we've decided that it is not considered free speech to discriminate against this group of people. So what that means is, let's say a gay dude comes into my restaurant and he's being a huge piece of shit. I can say, I want you to leave for no reason, or I can say, I want you to leave because you're being a piece of shit, or I want you to leave because you're a Democrat or a Republican. But you can't say, I want you to leave because you're black, or I want you to leave because you are from the country of India, or I want you to leave because you're a man or gay or whatever, right? Those are generally the decisions that we've made so far in society in terms of like protecting classes of people. And, you know, we can go into social reasons for whether or not this is a good or bad idea, but that's generally where we're at right now. So if you ask, I want to make a cake with interlinking genitalia, I mean, you can say no to this because as a bakery, maybe you just don't do genitalia on cakes.
Gender symbols. The circle.
I like Steve's idea more for our wedding.
Steve's into some weird shit. Like, do you not know how hard-ons work? You can't link them.
Oh, yes, you can if one's uncircumcised.
Some of those porn stars are
docking.
Pretty, shit.
Yeah, my mistake.
We're going to be docking. Damn it, Kyle, are you circumcised?
Absolutely.
Me too. God damn it.
You're incompatible.
You need a lot of foreskin to dock two hard dicks. I don't know. But yeah, so like if somebody came in and they were just like, I want a cake, like you could say that like I don't do like those types of symbols. So like I could do a cake with two guys and no problem. But in terms of like adding like interlinking gender symbols, I don't know if maybe that you could say like that's the policy. Basically, as long as you're not discriminating against a certain class of people that we've decided are protected classes, you're generally okay to do what you want. But it's when you're discriminating against somebody on the basis of what we've decided is a protected class. In the U.S., we generally decide that's not an okay thing to do.
If like they get like an incendiary, like to Kyle's point, that message on the sheet cake that Woody got, if Woody was like, hey, I'm going to my religious event and we're talking about how much gays are ruining the world and terrible, and that's why we need this on there, would they be able to say, no, I'm not doing that? Or
so like you could say,
well, that is your religious right.
Sure. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an ACLU guy. So someone can correct me if I'm wrong. If someone in chat reads this later or on the YouTube comments, or whatever, you could say, no, I don't want to do that type of message because, you know, I consider that to be offensive or whatever. And that doesn't include like, you know, like just because of a protected class or whatever. But you wouldn't be able to say, I don't want to do that cake because I don't do cakes for religious people. So that I think that would be the distinguishing line there, which seems kind of fine, but that's
kind of stuff just by like changing their real motive, where they're like, I don't like the fact this guy's Muslim or whatever. I'm not going to bake his Muslim wedding cake or whatever, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, oh, you're being rude. You're being a piece of shit. Get out of here. And then they no recourse.
He comes in. He wants a groom and a tiny little bride.
Yeah, you could people do this all the time when they fight about like workplace discrimination, right? Very rarely is somebody going to say, I'm firing you because you're a woman. You usually have to do like a big investigation to find out like, okay, well, this guy's fired like 82% of the women or something, and I can prove some sort of thing, right? It's usually more complicated than saying, you know, like I'm discriminating against you because I hate the women or the gays or the whatever Indian people or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like all these companies can still, if they want to turn down service, they'll find a workaround for it.
All right.
Well, you basically just say fuck you. I don't want to serve you. Leave. That's it. You can just say that.
But beyond the legality, I want opinions. Our opinions. We are now the Supreme Court. Just the four of us. Forget the fact that's not the rest of them have been killed. There are a few. The four of us have to make a decision on this. Now, personally, where I stand is neither one of those bakers should have to make that cake. The baker shouldn't have to make the cake with myself and Taylor on the top, and he also should not have to make Woody's hate cake.
Christ, Woody.
My bad. I was born hateful. It's not my fault.
So I guess you go first.
See, the whole art side of it changes it a bit for me. Like I kind of like the way they handle discrimination. So I feel like they have it right. You can't discriminate based on age, sex, disability, sexual orientation, etc. Should he? But you know, if I commission a painting that's against what you like, fuck it. I think it's funnier if you're forced to do things you hate. So there's my answer.
What a terrible rationale.
Hey, you know what? This is a lifetime appointment. I can use any rationale I want.
Oh, that's true. We can just be bonkers up here. Gay marriage legal. Gay divorce, nay, nay. That decision is made, my friend. Oh, man, we'd be a great Supreme... Well, no, the country would be a shambles.
The compelled art question is like really interesting. I personally don't know. I would have to think for a long time about that, because we almost have to answer like unanswerable questions like what is art, you know? Say, for instance, we say, okay, well, you know, this is clearly art, you know, commissioning a design on a cake is art. We shouldn't be allowed to do that. How far could you take that? Like, say I go to get a bouquet of flowers, right? Well, is it art in the way the guy decides to arrange it? Say I decide I want to get a new paint job done on my car. Is it art to get like my car spray paint? Like, I feel like that argument could be stretched to uncomfortable lengths. Maybe I'm not entirely sure on that. But on the flip side, you know, should somebody be able to commission something like a painting that is clearly, you know, art?
I think
it's
it's
a really hard
blurred line. It's a really blurred line with what you just described because, like, I don't think painting my car red is artwork. However, I've seen those vans that have an entire like mosaic on the side,
or even
that's clearly art, or landscaping. Cutting a yard is not art, but cutting the shrubbery in like your Edward Scissorhands into like all kinds of like animals and stuff. That's art. I can't do that shit.
They face that with porn, right? In porn, there's a line that's really hard to distinguish between art and porn, right? You know, you can see a topless woman with the skirt on in the sunset, and it's art. It's art.
Well, I think you nailed it, Woody, because the age-old thing they say about porn is, I know it when I see it.
That's right.
And that was the Supreme Court litmus test. Yeah, I'll know it when I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that does it. I think that does it across the board with all of the things we just discussed. Because I can look at landscaping and I know artful landscaping when I see it. A golf course isn't artful. I mean, they cut it. My yard isn't artful. But like, I'll go back to Edward Scissorhands. That was art.
How it does seem like, to Steve's point, you could just infinitely reduce this, where it's like, hey, you just mowed my lawn. Yeah, but look at that. I did I'm riding this lawnmower. That's a skill. That's an art. And look at that cool little spiral I did over by your tree. You know, that's really neat.
It's a little gay.
It's a little gay. But like, you could like take the art. Like, I feel like it's easier. I know it when I see it is easier with porn than it is with art, just as a giant, you know.
I disagree. Maybe we're fighting with that a lot right now on my platform, on the platform I'm currently banned from, but on Twitch, that's a big fight right now. That what is too sexual for some of the girl streamers versus what isn't. That's a really hard one to do. I'll know it when I see it, because holy fuck, I've seen a lot of fucking porn, and I don't know when I look at some Twitch streamers. Like I don't know what exactly I'm.
You know what the problem is?
Sometimes.
The problem with that is the people who are supposed to be knowing it when they see it are trying to fuck those streamers a lot of times. You'll like look at their favorite streamers on their list, and it's all titty streamers. It's like, well, you are not an impartial judge. Like you need to throw together a panel of people who decide who is being too sexual and who isn't. Because there's some guy, takes his shirt off and he gets kicked off for 2 weeks, and some girl like routinely has like her nipples like popping out of like the extremely thin material, and is like, she's like, oh, I got $10. 10 squats, and she's wearing like a, you know, like,
no,
she's just trying to stay fit.
Yes.
They'll really be like $10, and then they'll turn their ass to the camera.
And do that's not all. Here's the thing they do.
To do that now.
This is one of my favorites. They'll have like a whiteboard, Taylor. They'll have a whiteboard behind them, and they'll be like, God. "Oh, Taylor made the donation list."
I'm glad he's pantomiming this.
Yeah. he's not pushing his ass out anywhere near enough, and he needs the
you need to give it a little shake, like you got to.
Are they playing video games? I thought you had to be playing video games to be on Twitch.
No, not anymore. IRL streaming.
Yeah. Huh. But then to represent the flip side of that, it can be really hard to decide, you know, because on one hand, you know, you can say this has gone too far, but then on the other hand, it seems like people sometimes are almost pushing for like full-on burqas to like cover women up as well. Like where people say, like, okay, like if I can see even like a micro nip poking through any part of your top, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Or if girls are doing things where it's like, you know, some women have big boobs, you know, and based on what they wear, some women will have a lot of cleavage just by the nature of having larger chests. You know, you can't always wear, you know, like a turtleneck sweater to cover up every part.
You're exaggerating really to make your point, though. Like I talked to my wife about this, and because we had I guess we had a titty streamer on the show one time, like 2 years ago. And she's like, she knows what she's wearing. I can tell you. She's acutely aware of, you know, what she looks like, how much cleavage she has, etc. That, you know, that's a thing that starts with picking out the shirt, maybe before you have it on. They're not surprised to learn that you can see down their shirt on that camera angle. All girls have been negotiating that path since they turned 11 years old. So
yeah, sure. But like the problem comes in where it's like, for a guy, if I live in a warm climate, or say I live in an area where my house is just, kind of warm, I don't have to think twice about what shirt would or wouldn't be appropriate. Like I just never have to process it. In fact, I could almost not wear a shirt. I could wear like a wife beater or something if I really wanted to. But for women that have large chests, navigating that can be kind of confusing, because there are women that wear things, even just around other women without going out to talk to guys, that some guys will look at it and be like, oh my God, this woman is being a huge fucking whore. Like, why would you ever wear? Mm-hmm. Whereas for that woman, it's just like, okay, well, this is comfortable for me. Like,
you're
I don't
way too lenient.
Wear, like,
They know exactly what they're wearing, what they're doing, and they know what they. And these are girls that are about to live stream in front of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And it's like, you know what? Mistakes were made.
I've lived like 7 years between two different girlfriends that had very large chests, and like just knowing, like things like even wearing a bra can be very irritating. Like there are a lot of women where as soon as they get home, the first thing to do is take their bra off, because it's like
they're live streaming in this situation.
It's work.
Yeah,
I
it is to some extent,
take
but like
off all my clothes when I get home.
Sure, yeah.
And put on pajamas.
It's just one of those things where, like, as a guy, you don't really have to ever think about it, but when you're a girl, you do have to think about it. And then, like, the standards by which we play by could be very different based on different cultures.